Growing up in church as a Christian, I always really disliked the idea of blessed. I think it's because the concept of being blessed means that someone else is not blessed, or like I have a nice house because God blessed me, not because white privilege and because capitalism. And maybe also because the idea that we have shit because God blessed us is kind of how Christians colonised half the world. But I digress. So I grew up as a Christian, and when I was in my 20s, I ended up in a Pentecostal residential rehab cult with 30 other people assigned female at birth who were all recovering from addiction or mental health issues of some kind. Now, I've told a lot of stories about this, so I won't go into detail about how I got there. But in summary, I think it's kind of the logical progression of what happens if you truly believe that you have to do absolutely anything to please God and to be blessed. There were various ways that we believed we could be blessed. You could be blessed with a really fulfilling ministry. That's like the way that you're going to serve God with your life, or with a nice house maybe, or, most importantly, with a God-fearing, faithful, and deliciously handsome husband. I mean, always a husband. Like the fact that I was in love with a woman for the 5 years I was in that cult was irrelevant. God was obviously going to give me a husband. So when I met this man at church who was a couple of years my junior, an actual legitimate Bonds body model, an aspiring actor, seemed to be into me, I was like, I'm so blessed. I actually remember praying that. God, that's embarrassing. Sorry, God, blasphemy. I was like, God, thank you for blessing me with a man like this. Yeah, I know. How embarrassing. And like we weren't even dating, like it was faked. I mean, the will of God. It was blessing, right? I even had a prophecy about it, like our official cult prophet, who everyone knew was infallible. Her name was Prophet Karen. That was legitimately her name. She said it was meant to be. James and I were going to be together. It actually all started out in a much less godly way than that. See, I had a job that I did 3 days a week outside of the cult. I was the director of a Christian theatre and education company because you were allowed to sometimes have a job outside the cult if it was a Christian job. So I had a small group of actors who used to work with me. They were all young women aged 19 to 21, and I was 26, which is like so old when you're 19. I'm sure we remember that. And we needed a male actor for this play we were doing. I thought of this guy, James, from church, because he wanted to be an actor. I should add that at this point I actually didn't fancy him. I legitimately didn't fancy him because everyone else in my cult was like lusting after him, and I was like, I'm so not that shallow, I'm not into looks, I'm above that. So I asked him if he wanted to be in the play. He said yes. I went back and I told the team. I happened to mention that he was a Bonds body model. They instantly went into this thing where they were like, which one of us is he going to fall for? And they went round and they were like, is he going to fall for you? Is he going to fall for you? And someone said, is he going to fall for Cara? And someone else said, no, Cara's way too old. too old. And I thought, in the nicest Christian way possible, fuck you, bitch. And following on from that, from this point on, James is sure as hell going to fall for me. So fast forward on a bit, and that's what happened. At least I think so. I mean, because there's all these fucking weird rules in Christianity where you're not allowed to talk about this stuff, but he started trying to contact me all the time. So he would always phone me at my cult house, and I would try and answer the landline and have these surreptitious phone calls because my mobile phone got confiscated because I was trying to have surreptitious phone calls. And the cult director would come in and go, "Who's that you're talking to?" "It's James." Slam down the phone because you're not allowed to have relationships, right? And then one time he rang up and said that he wanted to apply to volunteer at the house. And they said, "Do you want to volunteer at the house or do you want to volunteer to see Cara?" It was all so dramatic. Eventually, tragically, James kind of got over this and stopped trying to contact me and started a relationship with another woman at church. And I was heartbroken, or at least my pride was wounded. And Prophet Karen did not approve. He's out of the will of God, I'm telling you. From that point on, for the next few months, I didn't actually see James that much, except for at church, cuddled up in a very respectful Christian way with his new girlfriend, while I sat forlornly with a small group of other cult people, until the church did an Easter play. Now, Easter for Christians is about the crucifixion of Jesus. And for this Easter, the church decided to do a play which was playing out the whole crucifixion scene. This is the biggest church in Perth, by the way, not naming anywhere. Giant auditorium, seats hundreds of people, lots of cinema seating, big stage. And for this Easter play, they decided that the person who would be blessed to play Jesus was James. James was a Bond's body model. He came out in a robe, sandals, stubble beard. He went for trial with Pontius Pilate. We all waited with bated breath. I mean, we know where the story goes, right? He had the trial. He was condemned. Sorry, spoiler alert. He gets condemned to death, right? They take the robe off. Underneath, he's wearing a loincloth. Only a loincloth. They drag him across the stage to, let's call it a St. Andrew's cross. They tie him to it. In the front row are 30 ex-addicts, many of them ex-sex workers, holding their collective breath. Out come the Roman officers in their little legionnaires' outfits. They pull out a whip. They whip him. He moans every time, every strike of the whip, and we see the ripples of pain across his Bond's body model muscles. All of us holding our breath. I'm overcome with the memory of it. They continue whipping him. They finish whipping him. He's suffering for our sins. A lot of this might make more sense if you're familiar with the Bible. other parts it might make no fucking difference, I don't know. They finish whipping him. They bring out a cross, like an actual wooden cross, and he carries it across the stage in a loincloth. Across the stage and down through the audience. Now, at this point, I'm actually just really embarrassed because everyone knows that I was in love with him because the cult director told them all, right? Because this is part of her strategy, is she has this tactic where you shame people publicly until they get over it. So she told them all that I was in love with him. So she had the same tactic with gay conversion. So everyone knows that I was in love with him and he left me for someone who was allowed to make a phone call. And now he's being whipped and in loincloth and carrying a cross in front of us all. They go on with the crucifixion. They hammer in the fake nails, more ripples of pain across muscles. Eventually he ends up crucified, chest heaving. Clearly, all of us were really focused on like Jesus' sacrifice and how blessed we were during this performance. I've kind of made this a lot more dramatic than it was. I mean, it actually was, that is literally what happened. It was that dramatic. But I wasn't as affected as much as I've probably made out. See, I kind of only ever got into this thing as some kind of ego game with one of my actors. Really, I was sitting in the church watching James get crucified, conscious of the woman sitting next to me, who I could speak to any time, but never about what we really wanted to talk about. The woman who stood next to me outside the church after that performance, next to my Holden HQ ute that I bought because she liked it, who stood there as I said, you know, we could get in my ute and go. We could go on the road and never come back. And she said, you know I would, if you would. And I said, I know. And we stood there and we got in the ute. And we went back to the cult. Why? Because we were scared. Because if you're gay, you go to hell. Because we were scared of being outside of the will of God. Because we were scared not to be blessed. I still wear the ring she gave me.